Good evening, everybody. If you're from Southeast Asia, my name is Angga Arifandi. You can call me Angga. I'm a mobile developer at Rock.so. I'm also a GDE for Flutter at Indonesia. And today I'm going to talk about the Flutter Web development retrospective. Basically, I'm just trying to reiterate to what I've been through this couple of months in developing Flutter Web professional projects. So this is my background. Like I said, I work at Rock.so, a startup company, and then I'm also a Google developer expert in Flutter. I occasionally write open source code in my GitHub. You can see it there. I also write in my Medium. That is there as well. Also, if you have any questions, probably about Flutter or say any general development inquiries, you can email me at my email right below. So first, let's go through the history of Flutter Web. When is the first time Flutter Web is developed? Exactly. So this is the first trace that I can get. It's around December 5th, 2018, probably around the first announcement of Flutter 1.0. It's actually have a different name. Back then it was called Hummingbird. It was written, there's an article by Yegor Ivanov, which is a software engineer at Google in Flutter team as well, I think. So basically this Hummingbird is trying to port the Flutter functionality, which is already stable at the moment for Android and iOS. And then basically the Google team is trying to move or port them to web, Chrome OS, and then desktop as well. Back then the name of the project is called Hummingbird. And then we move to Google I/O 2019. Exactly, it's May 2019. I think there's two Emily who is inside the Google Flutter team are showcasing the Flutter for Web technical preview. They are showing this project in the right hand side, which is really cool, I think. Web built using Flutter for Web. It's not that great, I think, at the time. There's a lot of bugs, especially because this is like the first technical preview, right? A lot of bugs, a lot of incompatibilities, and then the packages, a lot of packages are not supported yet in the Flutter for Web, because I think mostly people are starting to move to Flutter for Android and iOS functionality, not for web. And then we move again to December 2019, around 7 months from the technical preview. Mariam, which is the product manager of Flutter in the Google Flutter team, are writing an article about web support, which is going to beta. So it rises one level from technical preview to beta. I think a lot of improvements here and there. I also tried it at least once for just for the sake of exploring, and then I would say it's not that great yet. Still a lot of stuttering that I will show as well in the next coming slides. But yeah, I think a lot of improvements already. And then next is last week, which is March 20 and 21, around 3 years or probably 2.5 years from its first announcement to the public. Flutter Web is officially available in stable, which I think we can translate it as it's ready for production, basically, more or less. But is it actually ready, or did I consider it to be production ready? What is the positive sides of Flutter Web? What is the negative sides? I will go through it in the coming slides. So first, let's go through the architecture of Flutter Web. If you didn't know, there's actually already a Angular Dart. It's been around a while. I think even before the Flutter 1.0, it's pretty popular as well. The block, I think the first block presentation also was based on the idea of sharing the code between the Angular Dart, which is written using Dart, and then Flutter, which is written using Dart as well for mobile app. So basically, it's been around for a while, and then Flutter Web is a little bit different, I would say, from Angular Dart. Uh, Probably in a way that its code is being written, and then the architecture as well. Basically, Flutter Web is using Dart 2JS bridge, which is basically, stating for its name. It's a bridge between Dart 2JS. So the Flutter framework itself was written fully in Dart. Everything is in Dart. It's been used for, I think, platforms, mobile, and then web, and then desktop as well, and then embedded as well, I think. And then the site which is talking to the browser, which is translating our Dart code to the browser to the web form, is the bottom side, which is on the orange. So currently, I think the first time it's been around, Flutter Web is converting the Dart code into a standard HTML and CSS, which is used to render the components, the web itself. But later on, there's a slight change or improvements. We'll talk about it in the next slides as well. So what is the latest Flutter Web updates from last week's Engage? The first one is performance. This is always have been, I think, the people are always trying to compare this performance of Flutter Web to other frameworks, say React or Vue or Svelte, which is really upcoming web framework, right? So they added another render. Previously it was rendered into an HTML, but they add another renderer, which is Canvas Kit. I think it's been around on the master branch as well for a while. At least I've been using it for a while. So basically, now developer have the flexibility to use one of these two renders. So what is the difference? So the HTML renderer is basically will result to much smaller code, but probably in terms of performance, it's not that good. You'll see a lot of stuttering, but this will be used mostly, at least from the out-of-the-box solution. It will be used if the Flutter Web projects is being opened in a mobile browser. I think we can say that probably the Flutter team are trying to make the experience, at least the loading experience, for customers much better, so that usually how usually mobile is a little bit slower than desktop, because desktop we have like dedicated Wi-Fi probably, or probably even connected to LAN cable, which is really fast probably compared to our mobile internet. So yeah, that's the idea. And then for desktop, we'll use Canvas Kit, which is in terms of size much bigger. We'll see in the coming slides as well. But in terms of performance, it's much better as well. Definitely less stuttering, at least as far as I can tell, compared to the HTML. So the default is whenever you build a Flutter Web project, the Flutter engine will smartly decide whether to use HTML renderer or Canvas Kit based on the platform the user is opening your web project from, right? But we actually can decide ourselves if we want to only use HTML, let's say, for much smaller loading time, or probably if we want to use Canvas Kit for much better performance. So basically, this is I think the biggest improvement from Flutter Web last week. And then there's also there's also web specific features improvement. First is now we have control over URL based navigation. You can see, if you've pretty familiar with Flutter Web previously, there is always a hashtag at the end of the URL in your Flutter Web projects. Now you can basically control all of that. If you want to change the URL, you can do that as well. And then next thing is the text rendering. I think it has been uh, there has been a lot of improvements on the text rendering on Flutter Web since its beginning. Probably because I'm not going to go through the details, but the text rendering is one point where I think the Flutter Web is constantly improving. I think Harris also mentioned it in his slides. And then next is this is a pretty good one as well, a production use, which is a pretty complicated one, I would say. Which is the website is code.irobot.com. You can open it on your browser. It's written totally in the from the Flutter Web. You can see I think the use case itself, the animations, and then playing sounds, and then the UI itself, responsiveness is super complex, I would say. Probably this is, I think, at least for me, when I saw this written using Flutter Web, I'd be much more confident in using Flutter Web for my professional projects, because basically, if you see that this sort of a complex website is being done using Flutter Web, then probably yours is, which probably much more simpler than this, probably will be can be done in Flutter Web as well. That's the idea, at least. And then next thing is the plugin support. Definitely this is one thing that is being considered by the Flutter developer all over the world as well, in terms of using Flutter Web or not for their professional projects. At least for the official package, I think there's 8 or 9 in my slide. This is the official package, which is some of those packages I think are pretty integral to our projects as well, like Google Maps. Most probably, I think, like majority of the people will reuse this. At least I use it for my personal and professional project in Flutter Web, and it's good to see that this plugin supported finally by the Flutter community or team. And then next goes to my experience with Flutter Web. So this is my first professional project, and then I basically strike through it. What does it mean? So basically, this is a website. The website is already done as well. You can see it right here. It's just like a company website. User can add form, add their data, and then submit it. Basically, it's as simple as that. I think a lot of companies have this website. So at first, I'm trying to write this or develop this using Flutter Web. It's in May 2020, and then probably around like 10-15% when I'm developing this larger page right here, and then developing the next one. I faced a dilemma basically. Basically, I use this as my means to probably, if it's good, this is some kind of my bet, right? If it's good, then definitely this will be heaven, right? Because I wrote Flutter in my daily basis, and then if I can write a web project with Flutter as well, then that'll be heaven for me, I think. And then I think like 10-15% through this writing this project, and then when I see the result, basically I would say no offense, but I think it's disappointing in May 2020. Even when I scroll down this page like this, when I scroll like this, it's a lot basically. I don't think it's at least in 2020 it's usable yet. So I'm pretty much disappointed with my first trial of Flutter Web, and then I basically backed up. I didn't complete this project. I didn't even have the code anymore. So that's why I strike through it. But I have my second professional project, which is basically my task is I have to write a PWA for an app that is actually already exists on the Play Store. I cover some of its parts, so you guys didn't know what is it because it's not released yet. And then I'll also have to create an iOS app for this as well. And then one thought popped off to my head. Probably Flutter Web is, or Flutter is one good option for this, because in this one it's basically a static page. Just there's just one form. There's not much changing in this project, but this is different. This is a PWA. This is an app basically, right? And then I'll have to write an iOS code as well. And then I wrote this starting in November 2020, so probably 6 months compared to the previous projects, and it has improved a lot. I, I I'm not sure what is it. Probably the renderer engine. I think they recently changing it in around October, November, if I'm not mistaken. And then it's basically completed as of now. All of the things are working, or are working well. Some of the stuttering are still there, at least a little bit, but I would say this is like really really good result that I get. Pretty much the same like the original app, which is written in Android native. So yeah, I'm definitely happy, and I can export it to iOS as well, which is like really really great, right? So what is the feature I've used? Probably you guys are curious about this. What is the features I've used for that project? First is the basic functionality, like HTTP basic UI and then responsive UI as well. I use the analytics as well from some providers, which is already have a package written in Flutter and Dart. And then I use the local storage, which is using shared preferences package. It's already published as well. I use the URL launcher, which is working really really great. And then I also use the Dart2JS interrupt, which basically I can call JavaScript code from my Dart, and then vice versa. I can call my Dart function from JavaScript, which is I think pretty sufficient for all of my use case in that project. So what is the positive aspects of Flutter Web that I've met in my that two projects, or at least the last one? First is, I think this is the most powerful part, at least for me. I think the developer experience writing UI in Flutter, compared to I knew how to write web using HTML, CSS, Vue, React as well. I think this is something else. This is like really really great. A lot of, at least what I know is two of the platforms, Android native and iOS native, are moving to this direction as well, right? iOS with Swift UI, and then Android with Jetpack Compose as well. So I think this is the way to do it. Probably this, I can safely say now, confidently, that this is probably the future of writing UIs, even for mobile, web, probably the desktop as well, right? Probably this is the one key points that made me choose Flutter Web for my last project. Next is, pardon me for the bad circle. We can reuse our mobile code to web. Say in my previous project, in my last project to be exact, I have to write code for iOS app, and then I have to write a PWA as well, right? So we can have a shared package which basically consists all of the APIs, models, utility functions, logic, basically all the code that can be shared between mobile app and web app can be inside this package. And then I'll just have to write probably I don't know, like 10% of the remaining code on each platform, mobile app, web, and web. Let's say for some specific situations. So yeah, that's been a bliss for me. And then next is, at least for me personally, the frameworks of web. There's been way too much options for me. First there is React, and then Vue, and then we have Svelte, which is the rising, at least in this past few months, right? So I didn't know all of that. Probably I know a little bit Vue, but I use Flutter in my daily basis, and I think if I can use these skills for my efficiency, then that'll be like super super great for me. And then next is, what is the much needed improvements of Flutter Web? So first is, this is probably one of the biggest pain points in using Flutter, the SEO support. Basically, as of right now, we cannot use SEO using Flutter, because the SEO, the search engine crawler, cannot crawl the text the strings we've had on our Flutter Web projects. So basically, this is not usable. This issue has been, I think, for like 2 years now around, and then it's not solved yet. Next is the server-side rendering. This is also one of the cases which are being searched, and then a lot of thumbs ups as well, and this hasn't been fixed as well. Not sure about this though. Will this be supported or not in the future? And then next is in mobile we had hot reload, sorry, but in Flutter Web we don't have it. We only have hot restart, which basically is the same as you reloading your Flutter Web project. So you don't save the state. Let's say you'll go back to the beginning screen of your Flutter Web project. Next is this is also a little bit I think at least this is my pain point. I saw this in my projects. Some parts of the text are not getting rendered on the PWA mode on some devices, and yeah, this is a little bit sucks as well. But yeah, I think they are trying to solve this. I'm not sure if it's solved yet or no. Next is the performance issue. This is the website, the code.irobot.com. You can see on this screenshot that it's had a lot of stuttering, especially on mobile. Not sure what kind of render they are using, but yeah, and that's another key aspects that you had to consider. Next is the Flutter engine size. At least this is the canvas kit. The size is a little bit big, I would say. It's 2.5 MB. I saw a talk last night from CodeMate. I think in total they have like 4 MB of Flutter engine in size. And then what to consider before choosing Flutter Web is first, like Harris said, if your project is one of these PWAs, single page apps, or probably you already had a Flutter mobile apps and then planning to expanding to the web platform, probably this is for you because you already know Flutter, you already invested your time to learn Flutter and write the code for it, and then yeah, probably this is just like one more step in migrating the project or moving the project to web. Next is the last consideration is if you have prior Flutter knowledge and loved using Flutter to write UIs, I recommend this to you. Next, if you've already have Flutter project and wants to expand, this is good for you as well. Next is try to research your use case and see if all plugin and use case is already supported. Like if you want to use SEO, probably it's not now. If you want to use SSR, it's probably not now as well. And then next is this is always changing rapidly, I would say. You can see that from May 2020 and then November 2020, the changing it's basically changing rapidly. So yeah, you'll have to monitor it at all times, especially on master and beta channel, because the changes are coming a lot from that channel. So yeah, sorry if I exceed my time. That's my presentation.
Like it's Flutter event, but what do you really think about React Native? What's the high point of Flutter, and does this guy need to migrate or just keep both? So our experts, who is going to take this?
I can start. Basically, for the first question about React Native, I personally don't know too much. I've never used it before. But every framework seems to have its strengths and weaknesses. Like, you might pick Flutter. You might prefer Flutter for some use cases, and you might prefer React Native for some cases. As for the second question, I'm not exactly sure what higher point means. So if you could clarify with a follow-up question, I might be able to answer it. As for whether you need to migrate or just keep both, if you're referring to null safety migration, you can keep your Flutter code not null safe, but we strongly encourage migrating it to be null safe.
Oh, it was a very diplomatic answer from person from Flutter. So probably Angga, Harris, any thoughts?
Let me add in. So I've actually tried React Native before. I actually taught a class on React Native. So personally, I'm not. I guess once you go Flutter, you don't go back. You know, that kind of thing. Personally, for React Native, there are ups and downs. So I guess there is this feature where you're able to push your changes through the web. So like for I forgot what's the feature called, but it's like when you change it in your, for example, when you push it to GitHub and then it will update the app. You don't have to push it through the App Store and Play Store in a sense that it updates it live, that kind of thing.
Expo,
So
I think.
yes, Expo. But I
Expo.
don't know what's that feature where you're
Yeah.
able to, yeah. But so I guess that's the advantage of like React Native. You can, update it live using Expo and whatnot. But for Flutter, there is an issue I remembered where you are able that people wants to do that similar feature, but I think the Flutter team said that no, we want to render it through native, and then we don't, because you have a lot of things to go through in terms of policy when you want to push it through the App Store, or when you want to do it in the Play Store as well. So I guess like Flutter sticks to his gun and just went through with being a native app framework, and yeah, I think it works well as well. So it really depends on the situation, like Shihao mentioned, that whether you want to use React Native or Flutter, because I guess both have its own advantages and disadvantages. Yeah.
Angga, do you want to add anything?
All right, probably I'll just add a little bit. So basically, the difference, as far as I know, between Flutter and React Native is Flutter is a canvas. And basically, it's just a canvas, right? You can draw anything in there that you want, or probably that is being provided by the Flutter team. As the React Native is a little bit different in a sense that it grabs the actual widget from the like each platform, right? Either Android and iOS. So probably if you want to get more native experience, I would say that the React Native is a little bit better than Flutter. But also there's a downside of this, right? Especially when you want to grab that component from the each platform, you have to have like time for communication, right? To get that actual components, and then say if that exact components is updating, you'll have to wait for the component from React Native to be updated as well. So there's a lot of ups and downs, but I think you'll have to try it as at least once. I'm not saying that Flutter is like the way to go for everyone, but I would say yeah, just try it at least once and then do what's best for you. If you like Flutter rather than React Native, like the code, the way how you code it, and then the components, etc. So probably you'll have to go for React Native. Otherwise, go for Flutter, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Let's move on. So next question is to Harris. What's about common Flutter stacks and web projects customization?
So Flutter stacks, I guess you might be referring to like what is the front end stack and the back end stack for Flutter and plus something else, right? So I guess there's many that you can use. Flutter, it's already a UI toolkit. So the thing to power the data to show on your Flutter apps can be, the most common ones are Firebase, and now there is the AWS Amplify. So it's just like the AWS version of Firebase, where it has like data and then analytics and such. So you have that as well. And then if you really want to go to like relational database, or those like database where it's you want to have for example MySQL, or those kind of like databases that you need to learn SQL as well. So I think there's a lot that you can play with. And yeah, in terms of web projects customizability, I think Angga can answer that question because he's very experienced.
All right, let me continue. Let me add into that one. In terms of web projects customizability, I think as far as I know, it's pretty much how do I say this, like customizable, because Dart has already have a package called Dart HTML and then Dart JS as well, which lets us developers basically to customize anything on the HTML document, the JavaScript site, to the index.html that we use as well. And then as far as I can say, at least on my experience, it's pretty customizable, but you have to take your use case. I can't say yes for all use case because there's a lot of use case, right? You have to especially see that the plugins are supported for your use case yet or not. If not, probably you'll have to wait a little bit because you don't want to spend a lot of time, writing all of that code which usually we get from plugins, say like or Firebase or something. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next one. Why Flutter apps are heavier than basic Android app, and is it true or not? Shehao.
Yeah, I can try and answer this one. The answer for this is it kind of depends. So every Flutter app has a fixed overhead size for all the various parts of the Flutter framework. So every time you upload a Flutter app, you need to bundle in the framework with it as well. And there's just that small overhead size. So it also might depend entirely on how the app is architected. Like the Android app and the Flutter app is like completely different. So it's really hard to compare one to one. I think your best bet is to basically just do a size comparison itself for every app. And I'm pretty sure the result will be very different depending on the size of your app and the way you architect both your native app and your Flutter app. I'll try and find the link for the size of the Flutter bundle that comes with every app and share it on the YouTube live stream.
Thank you. Next one, Angga, web. How to custom
Yes.
name around.
Yeah, this is on my slide already as well. So this is the new addition to the Flutter Web as well, announced on the Flutter Engage last week. So it's called URL strategies. We can basically change the URL. I think GDE from San Francisco, Mariano Zorilla, also write like a code pen for this, which he basically creates a sample web app, a Flutter web app. When he clicks a button, it will basically change all the URL inside your browser, which is very cool, I think. So yeah, I think pretty much it's already there inside the flutter.dev websites.
Thanks, Angga. And probably the second of my favorite questions. Google likes to kill projects. So, Shehao, do you think that Flutter will survive? What is the future?
I mean, based on my experience so far, I'm pretty sure it's here to stay. Google has been investing really heavily. There's a bunch of Google projects that already depend on Flutter that are new, like GPay, Fuchsia, Stadia. And, we're also actively growing our scope and like our team, and we're not slowing down, as you can tell from Flutter 2.
And just to add a little bit, as I really like Flutter, and just to wait more, I believe more and more companies have already started using Flutter, or are using Flutter for quite a while. Even for this Engage event, I think there were quite a few new names like Toyota and so on, and a lot of Chinese companies. And there are also news about spikes in jobs for Flutter developers. So the future looks pretty good. Okay, let's move to questions from YouTube. So the first one, how to start Flutter development and stay consistent if a person from a different development framework?
So I
Anyone?
guess I can share my experience. So how to start Flutter development, stay consistent. I guess one thing that a lot of developers have is side projects that die. I think most of us have, right? So I guess one thing that I've realized that makes you more motivated in learning something is to actually solve a problem that you have. So for example, if you can't wake up early in the morning, you can create a Flutter app that's a alarm clock, but maybe have a twist. Instead of like having a typical alarm sound, you can record some voice or input some weird sounds, and then make a simple Flutter app from that as well. And then what I've done personally is if you want to, you can do a live stream. So I guess that live stream will really help you like be in that zone, because sometimes we are distracted. So like if you're in live stream, there's nothing else you do but code. So you have that accountability of people looking at you and looking at your code. Even though I think most of us can relate, like when we code, whether it's a first project or if it's a framework, our usual first code is not very nice, pretty ugly, spaghetti code, whatever. But that doesn't matter, because I think we get better as we go. So so two things. One is to create a project that solves your problem because you get motivated to solve that problem. And second, to have accountability. It can be a live stream. You can join the Flutter group, Meetup, Telegram group, right, German? So,
Yeah,
and
sure.
then, yes, then you can share the projects. And then, we will also definitely will comment on it as well. Yeah.
Next one. A lot of Flutter packages still do not support web features. When will it be available for usage?
Probably I'm going to answer this. Yes, this is valid. A lot of packages, at least on my watch, there are some packages that aren't supported yet by Flutter Web. Probably what I'm going to say is I'm going to encourage you to try and contribute to that exact packages that you use, because there's definitely a lot of resource for you guys to expand that packages. Let's say previously it was only for Android and iOS. You can try and explore it yourself, which you'll improve your knowledge as well, right? But if you ask me when will it be available, I can't say because every package is different. Some package is even being handled by like one person, right? Probably we can't push him or her to create the Flutter web port as fast as possible, because probably he or she had other jobs or something. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is I want to encourage you guys to also contribute to that as well, which will be really great.
Okay, thanks. While I'm looking for another question, there is some friend request. Probably QA production is looking for a Flutter guy. And let's move on. So, Shihao, you were highlighted in this question. So, since autocomplete and raw autocomplete follow material guidelines, do we have any plans for autocomplete for Cupertino?
Yeah, I saw Ayush found the answer to this question on the design doc, but the answer is I looked and I couldn't find an iOS equivalent widget for it. So then we're putting it on hold for now. But if there is a widget and we just happen to miss it, the iOS component for it, point it out and share it on the design doc, and we'll definitely get to it. Also, a slight correction: the raw autocomplete doesn't follow material guidelines. It's that one's supposed to be the more generic one. Only the autocomplete one follows material guidelines.
Does anyone know what is the smallest size of Flutter Web app?
Yeah, actually, I watched the CodeMate meetup last night. It's discussing mostly about Flutter Web, and I think it said that the canvas kit size of the Flutter Web app is around 4 to 4.5 megabytes, which is quite big, I think, for now. And then in my slides as well, I can see that it's 2.5 MB, and then other other Dart file, I think, which adds up to 1 MB, so probably around 3 to 4 MB. But worry not, actually this is being fetched through the CDN, which I think most of the browsers will intelligently cache. So once you open a Flutter Web app, and then let's say you open another one, which is being built using Flutter as well, then it will use that cache instead of fetching the new one. So yeah, worry not.
Okay, thanks, Angga. And next one, again about web. So here the question is, in mobile app to web app video at Flutter Engage, I saw that the generated web code adds all the script files to download in the header. So how does it affect, impact download speed of Flutter app?
As far as I know, it doesn't it doesn't interfere with the mobile app because it used like a different mechanism, right? For Flutter Web, it will create like a folder inside your Flutter project called Web. Inside there, there will be an index.html file, which will be accessed by your users. And then for Android, there will be a separate folder, right? Android, and then for iOS as well. And then if you support desktop, there will be a different folders as well. So yeah, basically, once you export it for production build, it will only use the like exact platform that you're using, either for Android, iOS, web, desktop, etc. Yeah.
Looks like last question from Tristan. Is it possible to customize HTML rendering to defer the download of the script files? It's not very user-friendly if we need to manually change the HTML code after build generation.
This is a very, very interesting question. Thank you, Tristan Lucas, for the question. Yeah, actually, I already used this in my project. Like I said previously, right? We have the total control over our HTML file and then JavaScript file as well, because there's already a package. I think it's being used by Angular Dart, Dart HTML, and Dart JS, which we have all of the control over our HTML source code and then JavaScript source code as well. To give you guys an idea, I use this to because in web, if you guys are not familiar, if we want to use Firebase, we have to add like the Firebase credentials on the top of the HTML, right? So I use that I use this change the HTML code mechanism to supply that exact line to give the credentials of my Firebase from my Dart file. So basically, I didn't have to change my index.html every time I want to change, let's say, from development environment, staging, production. Everything is being done via the Dart. So yeah, that's cool.
I thought stateless would be hot reload. So I believe that question was about supporting hot reload
in Flutter Web.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm not sure what is the Flutter team's plan about this. Probably Shihao knows more. But yeah, as far as I know, whenever you want to restart or you want to reload the code from your Flutter Web projects, you hit the R, capital R, in your terminal, and then basically it reloads. It doesn't remember any of the state that you have previously. You'll be back to the very beginning of your app. Probably it will be supported in the near future. I know frameworks like React and then Vue already support this, right? Whenever we change our files, the content of the web will be updated automatically as well. We don't have to reload or anything. So yeah, I'm hoping this will be supported in the near future, and I'm pretty confident, I would say.
Yeah, don't have too much to add to that. Basically, it's definitely on the radar of the Flutter Web team. They always talk about it, and it always comes up during meetings.
Shihao, do you have any insights why it's hard to implement, why it's delayed?
Unfortunately, I don't. I'm sure there's a GitHub issue about it. I personally don't work too much with the web, so I'm sorry I can't answer this one.
No worries. We have probably a special question for you from Ayush. Are we going to incorporate adaptive scaffold in SDK itself?
I don't think this has ever come up, but maybe we could file an issue for it and see if it's popular and see what happens. I think it's a good idea, but I don't think anyone has ever brought it up on the team.
So Ayush, please consider to rewatch presentation and slides from Shihao and go this way. I'll try to submit the issue. Okay, let's move on while I am looking for the next question. So please, congrats. And probably next one. Does Flutter team, would be there any more videos for widgets of the week?
I didn't even know did they discontinue it? I actually haven't been keeping track.
I think right now they are working. I think I saw the boring Flutter development with Philip and Fitz. So yeah, probably that's like the substitute of it. It's great as well. Great content.
There's also
Yeah.
package of the week. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think-
that one too.
Yeah.
Right, they
When
might
it
have moved
comes,
on
it
to
comes.
other stuff.
Yeah, maybe. But personally, I feel that widget of the week has been very helpful because there are tons of widgets, as you can see from the quiz, that you guys don't know. So I believe in my heart that widget of the week will still go on.
So probably here we need again banner for some YouTube channel from one of our speakers, but let's move on. What about localization when we use Firestore? Can we do localization?
It should be possible. I haven't done localization with Firestore particularly, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. I can take a look and dive deeper and see if there's any issues with that.
Yeah,
I think
so-
another alternative, sorry to interrupt, probably
Oh,
another alternative that we can also do is we can also use the Firestore to, let's say, store to translation of the price, let's say, or some text or strings. We can use like the language code, right? Let's say ID is for Indonesian, and then EN is for English, something like that. Should work, I think.
It's also amazing, kind of. The third question about Holy War. So basically, what is the recommended way for state management?
So I
I
guess,
think-
okay,
sorry.
yeah. Shahao, you can start first.
Yeah, basically the Flutter team goes over this all the time, and the answer is always it depends. There's so many different ways to handle state management in Flutter, and they're all really different. And every app has a different use case. Like some apps might be simpler. You might personally prefer writing apps in a specific way versus another way. So we try not to say, oh, what's a recommended way or not, because we will likely steer a bunch of people the wrong way just by saying that.
So I guess from what I've seen so far I mean, this is a topic that I always been pop up in the Flutter Reddit and many other channels, right? So like after like going through, because I think I've went through the different stages of like what's the Flutter provider, what's the Flutter state management from block and then now provider. So I think personally I would recommend, if you are a newbie and you don't know what direction, then I'll recommend provider, because I think provider is the most that makes sense and it's easier than other state providers that I've explored so far. So provider, I would highly recommend you to go. And even in the Flutter documentation, when they introduce state management as a concept, they use provider as well. So even though it's not like you must use, but it's a gentle push to provider. But for myself, I hard push provider, because it's so there's always this question, and I'm just going to say provider. Yep. But this is only when you are a beginner who's learning state management. As an experienced developer, you definitely will learn a lot of state management like Redux, block providers and whatnot in other frameworks that you have experienced so far. So it really depends. But as a newbie provider for Flutter.
Angga, what did you use for your web applications?
Yeah, I have used a couple of them at 2018, like really old times. I used scope model at the beginning, like the very beginning, right? And then after that, I moved to the block, and then after that, I used Redux. I tried Mobex as well, and then recently I fell in love basically with a provider because it's so simple. So probably I'm going to agree with Harris that if you are a newbie, probably provider is the best for you because everything else has some strict rules that you have to follow. But I confident that probably you have to try at least once. Try to create this like a very simple project. Just let's say as like a simple calculator, and then try it for yourself. Because there's no like a true answer for this, right? You just do what you have to do. If you're comfortable with provider rather than block or Redux, probably you'll have to use that. So yeah, probably that.
Thanks, everyone. Next one from Anand from Leshehao. If Google already has Android, why we have Flutter?
Yeah, so I think the way I understand it from when I hear it from the leadership is that Flutter is basically Google's push for cross-platform UI framework. And then we have Android for like specifically for mobile. And it just basically serves two very different use cases. So like, as you can tell from Flutter 2, now we suddenly support web, we support desktop, and we also support some embedded systems with the announcement with Toyota. So basically, yeah, just two very different use cases, and that's why both of them exist.
Okay, thank you. And we have a few more questions. Ahmad is asking, what are some repositories that showcase best practices and architectures for Flutter, like except Harris, your channel? You need to. Do you know anything to recommend?
So I guess
Go for it.
sorry. Oh yeah. So I think the answer it's already in the question. You can go to the Flutter repository and you actually can like read through their documentation and actually feel how the Flutter developers themselves code the whole Flutter repository itself. At the same time, Flutter has also samples that you actually can look through. So there's like the Flutter gallery, and then there's also other samples as well. And then I think if you really want to like create like a hard like a big project, then I think there is this company that's called Very Good Ventures, where they use Flutter as their tech to develop apps for clients, right? So they just created this command line interface that allows you to build scalable apps. And then I've tried it, and they've generate like a couple of files, like your widget testing, your integration testing, and then they also have added in internalization from just one line of like command. And I think that's a good place for you to start if you are looking for like scalable architecture that the Very Good Ventures people have already went through and iterate through. Yeah.
Anyone to add?
Yeah, I have something to add. I remember that Brian Egan and Philip Hracek also are contributing to like create a Flutter template for this exact use case. So you might want to follow them as well. Brian, I think the Twitter account is Brian Egan and Philip Hracek, or Philip H. I'm not sure. Try to like get updates from that guy because those guys are awesome. Also, I remember last night when watching the CodeMate meetup that Flutter team is actually working on. Oh no, sorry, it was on the Engage. Ian Hickson was saying that Flutter team is basically are preparing that for that one is really great. Yeah, binding in Flutter architecture samples. Flutter team, I think, is also preparing that architecture samples so that whenever you run Flutter Create, probably you'll have more options. Like Android, right? You have freedom to create an app based on only one page, map apps, make map page or something like that. So yeah, let's see in the coming future.
Yeah, I can also add on to it a little bit. Oh, sorry. But yeah, if you go to github.com/flutter/gallery, it basically has a whole bunch of sample apps like wrapped into one, and it's also it's an adaptive app, so it like adapts to whether you build it on desktop, on web, on mobile. It has localization set up. It also includes like any of the more recent things that are added to the framework. For example, I just made the whole thing state restorable for iOS and Android. So if you need a tutorial for that, that's also included in the gallery. So we try to keep the gallery as updated on best practices and latest developments as possible.
Thank you, Shahar. And I believe we have two more questions. Ahmad, another Holy question. Monorepo to Monorepo or not to Monorepo? So, any thoughts?
Yeah, I actually have Monorepo. I actually am how do I say, like managing monorepos currently in my day-to-day job. Basically, our first idea of making monorepo was we want to create like a mobile app, Android and iOS, and then we want to support web and then desktop as well for the product, right? Everything is being built using Flutter. So we had let's say like this SDK package separately for all of the logics, all of the like basic widgets, non-platform specific. But I have also previous experience on Monorepo as well. But that one is for Android native and iOS native as well. So basically, we had this one repository holding the Android native project and then iOS native project. So I think the thing about Monorepo is you have to look at your use case. Does it suit you? For me personally, probably if the first case was really good for Monorepo because we want to have different projects, different Flutter projects to support, let's say, web, and then mobile, and then let's say desktop. But we want to share the code between them, right? So that we, repeat ourselves, repeat the code that we have written. So yeah, I think that at least in my opinion was a good choice. I enjoyed it right now using the Monorepo for that exact use case. Probably that'll help you guys.
Thanks. Any other thoughts? 1, 2. Okay, then Harris, there is a request. Please share your slides probably, and you can drop command line utility from your presentation that allow our guests to check.
Right. Is the CLI for the migration null safety, or is it for the? Because I think Ahmad also said awesome after that. But is the very good ventures CLI if you were referring to the architectural best practices? So I'll probably will also share it in the chat as well.